Mike Kern from Missouri Valley here with Adam Emmenecker. And good evening, Adam.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm very good. Let's talk a little bit about last week's results. And one of the teams that has gotten hotter has been a team that has a very tough schedule to start the season. Let's talk a little bit about Indiana State.
Yeah, the Sycamores, you looked at them through 6 games and you saw the 1-5 record and thought, oh boy, maybe this team's in trouble. Weren't going to be able to live up to expectations. But Greg Lansing and this is a pretty veteran group, right? Especially with Tyreek Key, their leading scorer, of course, 15 a game this year. He's been doing it for years. But when you look at their record and you mentioned the tough start. They hosted Drake, lost 2. Went to Missouri State, lost 2, and then split with Loyola. So they started 1-5. They're coming off 2 wins against the Redbirds in pretty convincing fashion. And what I do like about this team is I like their inside out balance and punch. So I mentioned Tyreek Key earlier, obviously pretty much an all world scorer as far as the Missouri Valley goes. I also like what Jake LaRavia brings to them. So he's a big guy, 6'9", listed at 228. He can get on the perimeter. He can move the ball a little bit, gets to the rim, and is also a good facilitator. This is one of the best teams in the country, top 10 in the country in their percentage of points that are free throws. That is something that bodes well for them as they have a lot of games down the stretch with tired legs and potentially an Arch Madness. The last shout out I'll give on that team, Trey Williams, I think has a really nice touch on the inside. He's a big that can put up 10, 12, 15 points. I expect him to continue to grow.
You mentioned a couple of things about Indiana State that brings to mind another team in the league, Loyola, and they mentioned free throw shooting. The Ramblers much better this year, and they've got a great inside-outside punch. A little bit of a lineup shuffle for them. They've got potentially 7 guys who are all starters, and one of those guys is Tate Hall, who came off the bench last week, had a big week for the Ramblers.
Yeah, what a nice problem to have for Porter Moser to have 7 starters pretty much. But listen, this Rambler team, winner of 3 straight, and we've talked a bit on this medium in the past about just how efficient they are on both the offensive and defensive end. But a special shout out to Tate Hall. Like you mentioned, that can be difficult for a player moving to the bench, having to deal with just a different mentality, a different mindset when you come into a game. But how about him? His first player of the week honors this year, averaging almost 19 points, 3 rebounds and 4.5 assists. His aggressiveness scoring the basketball and his ability to facilitate really allows Cameron Krutwig to be freer, to not put so much pressure on him. That's a huge help if Tate Hall can be that aggressive, that good of a facilitator on the offensive end for the Ramblers.
Ramblers play Valparaiso on Wednesday, and then they have a big matchup this week. A lot of big matchups in the next 7 days. One of those is Loyola and Bradley, and then of course Missouri State and Drake, getting Drake back into action after a long layoff. Talk a little bit about the big matchups ahead.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. This is really the biggest week of the year in terms of conference play. We expected this when Loyola was supposed to come to Drake a couple weeks ago. Obviously, now we've had a number of rescheduled games because of COVID concerns. But what great test. These are the 4 top teams, top 120 net teams in the Valley, Loyola at Bradley. So I'll be interested to see. These are both defensive-minded teams. They're both really tough teams. I think a big advantage for Bradley to be at home. So interested to see how that matchup goes. And then the big one I'm looking forward to, we haven't seen Drake in almost 3 weeks. Drake coming off their COVID concerns, playing against Missouri State, going down to Springfield. Missouri State's won 5 in a row. This team is long and athletic, playing well. Isaiah Mosley and Gage Prim. We'll see how the Bulldogs come off after such a long hiatus, if they're going to be able to match the athleticism and the grit of the Bears.
Well, by the end of this weekend, we will be at the 1/3 point of the conference schedule, and we hope to get all these games in this weekend. And big week ahead, like you mentioned. Can't wait to see some games this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Listen, Mike, this season, games are starting to get compressed. We got teams. This is going to come fast and furious. Looking forward to seeing how the season shakes out.
All right. Thanks again for joining me, Adam. And this is our shoot around for this week. We'll talk to you next week.